Hey everyone, it's Jeff. As we continue along on our podcast, Lora and I would love to touch on some topics that are near and dear to your hearts. So if you have anything that you want to hear us talk about, if you want to get Laura's unique perspective on some of the things that you might be dealing with or some things that your loved ones might be dealing with, we would love to hear about those things. Please send us an email. mail.sowhatwhocares@gmail.com is the best way to do that. Or you can send us something on social media through our DMs or a comment or something like that. But we'd love to hear from you. It's important to us to make sure that we are touching on the things that are important to you. Please, again, reach out to us. And while you're there, subscribe, like, and comment. Okay, enjoy the episode. This is So What Who Cares with Laura McCarville and me, Jeff Kolaski. Welcome back. This is part 2 of our conversation on consciousness, the unconsciousness, and everything beneath the surface. If you haven't listened to part 1 yet, we'd recommend starting there. But if you have, join us as we explore practical insights for an impractical mind.
Our dreams. I think we spend, if we live to like 80 something, we spend like 8 years of our life dreaming. So dreams are all the lower body, the lower ocean. It's all that unconscious material coming up in the way of symbols, in the way of myth, in the way of archetype.
So you're of the belief that our dreams do mean something?
Yeah.
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 You're like hesitantly just said that.
Well, I mean, yeah.
Okay.
But don't, if you're like, I don't dream, so am I crazy? No, like, yeah, I do think, and if we look towards different cultures I mean, dream readers are like a piece, like of course. So yeah, I sit with in dream interpretation, and Jung was a big thing with dreams. So I have done some dream studies, but it's it's incredible because you can do a lot with your dreams. You don't have to. You could Google what it means, but we can also, and this is really fun, you can go back into your dream sequence and ask.
Is that through like hypnosis or hypnotherapy, or is that
Like those deeper states, like hypnotherapy might be a place to do that. But
deeper meditative
yeah, deep
state?
meditation, journaling, and that
Okay.
like
Yeah.
free journaling.
Yep.
But just start with writing some stuff down.
Let's talk about that then. Is it symbolic? Are your dreams symbolic of things? If I have a dream that I'm swimming in the ocean and the shark's chasing me, I've never swam in the ocean and a shark's chasing me, and I don't know that my subconscious thinks that I have, or I can't speak to that. I don't know, but
Mm-hmm.
what you're speaking to, that may symbolize some kind of helpless struggle that.
So this is what I would do.
Yeah.
I wouldn't.
That's not my dream, by the way, but just so you know.
Sure.
Sure.
Defensive.
Yeah. I don't think I've ever dreamed that.
But let's say that is the dream. I would start by writing it down. And then if you didn't have someone to go to with it, I would not Google what does a shark in a dream mean. Instead, I would use it in meditation of putting yourself back into that dream if you felt resourced, and be really curious. Like, who's the shark? And listen, what is a shark? Am I the shark too? Because a lot of times we're the thing swimming and we are the shark. A lot of times we're all of those things. And we practice more curiosity, more the I don't know mind, and then see what comes up. And a lot of times when we do go back into dream sequences, we find we're all these symbols, and sometimes these other things become symbols, and we let that evolve and sort of unpack with time. We face our fears in our dream. We go back in.
So you said if you're resourced. If you're not feeling that, is it just not the time to go into that? Or do you suggest that someone find somebody that they could work with to help them? Or do you have to start at the beginning? Do you go back to your captain's hat and say, We're starting at the beginning. Episode 1, guys. Let's go back.
I don't think I don't want us to I don't want to encourage so much like psychoanalysis that we get stuck in like being healing projects or something to solve.
Yeah.
So when I say your resource, meaning like, are you also having fun in your life? Are you dancing? Are you going for walks?
Sure.
Are you eating?
Right.
So that
the
we're
time to go into is not maybe in your low slump. Let's not dig into our
now we got to look at
dreams.
the shark and so maybe, but if you can be curious, then why wouldn't we?
Right. Because it can be terrifying. That would be my response to why wouldn't you want to look? Because it can be scary. And when you wake up from a dream in a cold sweat, why would I want to go back into that? Maybe it means something. Well, do I want to know what it means?
Yeah.
Maybe.
So go at the pace that feels right.
Right.
But don't avoid it.
Mm.
Sometimes we're really surprised by what the thing is.
Mhm.
Yeah. So it can be scary. And that way I would seek support in it,
Sure.
because we don't have to face our fears by ourselves, or we don't have to face that shark by yourself. And you might find out, in that shadow, in the darkness, in that unconscious stuff also exists the golden shadow. It also exists like your power, right? You're so like this authentic you. So sometimes we get so caught in only the scary stuff is there, but so is the good stuff.
Sure. So I know we're going to spend some episodes on shadow and all of that. So I don't want to dig too far into that, but I do think it's relevant for us to talk about in this consciousness discussion that we're having right now. And I think that's a decent segue, because sometimes the unconscious is very uncomfortable. Very
Oh,
scary.
yeah. No, totally.
Yeah.
Because the ego has such a attachment to keeping things as they are.
Yeah.
So the ego is has a very strong sense of we're not going to mess with that stuff because it might mess with this sense of self, who I am. It might mess with my belonging in community. It might mess with my reality.
Right.
Might mean I have to get it. Nope, we're not going there. So, yeah, it can be very scary.
Right.
And it can also be very liberating.
Right.
Because it's already, I mean, this is the deal, is it's already happening. Like the unconscious material is already driving the bus. We're just pretending it's not. So if we get a little curious about it, then
there's something so it's a weird mixture between off-putting and kind of cool to think about the fact that there's so much happening underwater.
It's
Metaphorically.
wild.
And you're saying that that's what's driving the bus. I wonder if you could go into that a little bit further, because I'm kind of struggling with the idea that something that I have no what's the word?
Like
No
conscious awareness of.
conscious awareness of, and no conscious control over that gets to drive my bus.
Yeah.
Is the goal to not let it? Is the goal to just know that it is and we need to be more curious about it?
I mean, I wouldn't say there's a goal.
Okay.
I would say, yeah, I guess, I would say a lot of things, if we're pushing down a beach ball in a pool, you push it down and how it pops up on that. A lot of effort is being pushed to maintain the sense of self or whatever this conscious awareness, what you're conscious of. But that unconscious stuff is going to pop out. It's going to pop out sideways. And then we're going to be like, wait, what? And then we get to get curious through a compassionate lens on those things.
Right.
Now we can start to get curious. We don't have to be in crisis. It doesn't have to come out sideways, causing a lot of damage.
Mm-hmm.
We could get curious now.
Okay.
Right. And so that's what, a lot of this comes up in weird ways when people go into like goal setting. Like, I want to da 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 da, Um, have I told the butter dish story?
I don't think so.
So when I was divorced, I was single mom, really strapped, really doing the whole work 7 days a week thing.
Yep.
And at Anthropology, there was this beautiful little white butter dish, like so pretty. And I think it was like $20. And I remember thinking, when I have an extra $20, I'll know, like, I made it, right? And the day came when I could afford this $20 butter dish, and as Anthropology is probably like 40, but anyway, so I bring
Let's
home.
be real here.
Oh, it's so pretty. I remember I brought it home, and it was too short for a stick of butter, so I had to cut off.
Get the hell out of here.
And then it was too shallow for the stick of butter, so I had to slice off the top of the butter.
Okay.
So I had spent months saving for this butter dish, and then the butter didn't even fit in the dish. And I remember thinking, well, what the hell? But I wasn't conscious of the fact that I had thought, when I get this butter dish, I'll be safe. We'll be financially secure. What I thought is, one day I'm going to get that butter dish, and it's going to do all these things for me, And then you get the thing, and the thing doesn't do all the things, because it wasn't about the thing. No, it wasn't about the butter dish. It was about something I was seeking, or hoping for, right? That didn't exist inside a butter dish.
Right.
And so
that's what Dr. Stutz was calling the snapshot, right? The snapshot of the life that, as soon as I get this, or when I get to this, then I will be this. And you don't realize that that's not the thing that brings you, that's looking at things in a snapshot.
Oh yeah. I mean, that's, and then we say, well, what is the deep ocean that's driving the need for that snapshot? That sense of arrival, as if there is something.
Do you think that that's something that is an attainable? I mean, in your example, like, you maybe weren't at a place where you could really notice that there was a bigger picture here. The thing that you could focus on was a butter dish.
Yeah, and maybe the reality is maybe if I could have afforded at the time some therapy, but or time wise, I didn't have the time.
Right.
I was in survival, so I don't know if someone would have said, "Hey, maybe it's not the butter dish on your goal, on your vision board." Maybe it's a sense of feeling, and that was a huge part of like goal setting that got shifted. Around like goal setting, it's not the goal, it's the feeling you're trying to attain. So that I became really aware of that. But then we go like, well, what's driving the feeling? Is it conscious? Is it the unconscious? Is it the true self? Right. And so, and again, why do we do this? And it's not to like attain some mountaintop happiness. It's like to create a life of meaning, right? Like, what is this thing that wants to come through me, and who am I? Not in a way, let's answer it, but in a way that's like curious.
Right. So how do I know it's working? How do I know that the work that I'm, or what is healing, or I guess integrating, the unconscious kind of material, I guess. What does that look like? How do I know I'm doing it? How do I know?
Oh, I know. It's so wild because everyone in those social media spaces and in liminal exploration and medicine work, it's so popular right now. And everyone's like, are you doing the work? Are you doing
Now the real work
the
begins.
integration? And
don't you love that when people say that?
God, it's so gaggy. And I remember walking into the grocery store, and this woman was like, oh, I just got back from California. I did ayahuasca, And I mean, and I love grandmother, but I said, oh, well, now the integration starts, of that exploration. Because what she's doing is exploring the unconscious matter in that medicine. And I said, and she said, oh, yeah, we all had there's 100 of us and we all gave our integration talk. And I was like, oh, shoot. Like, we're talking like, as my dad says, steady jerks over time. He always says, if I say, how's it going? How's planting? Steady jerks.
Oh, wow.
It's going, it's going,
Yeah.
right? Everything happens in steady jerks. And
Yeah.
that's what integration is. It's like
Okay.
steady jerks. So, I get it. It's a sense of, safety and well-being. Okay. Right. We just kind of weave it in, and then we get pulled back and we weave it in
Right.
and we pull back.
Hmm.
Does that help? Does that
Does.
make sense if we know we're integrating
Does
what
it,
we're learning?
yeah. Does it result in, for lack of a better term, like feeling better? Does it result in, or feeling more like yourself, what you might think that it is to feel yourself? I'm just trying to really, really dive in and wrap my
Well, if we
brain
say
around what it.
feeling, I would say there's more of a sense of connectedness, calm. You can access curiosity, some of those 8 C's, creativity, over time. But man, when you get sometimes there's a lot of freedom, like when I got the awareness of this inherited unconscious story of what divorce does.
Right.
And that's in our culture too. That's not just on my great
No,
grandma,
yeah.
but that was freeing for me. Like, oh, this isn't mine. I
Right.
don't have to do that. Now, that's not, then what? How does that
Yeah.
integrate? Meaning, oh, here I am doing the thing of martyr. Here I am behaving in a way that's not mine. I don't have to be grumpy about this, actually, the way that my great grandma modeled post divorce to me. I
Right.
could actually be okay. So it looks more like catching yourself then once you have information.
Steady jerk.
Steady jerks. And then the other piece is sometimes you're just free of it. Like, oh, I got
Heard that. Now it's time to not care about it
it just
anymore.
gets
Yeah.
deleted. It's
Nice.
in rapid resolution therapy, we look at it like this, like there's a computer, right? And it's going slow, and I give it to my son and I say, hey, my computer's going slow. And he goes like, that, there's some programs running in the background. I say, no, there's not. I didn't see programs running in the background, right? No, there are certain things we can do to just no longer have programs running in the background.
Gotcha.
Mm-hmm.
Like what?
Well, that's like the rapid resolution therapy or some of these
yeah.
bottom-up therapies, hypnotherapy, brain spotting would be one, EMDR. Some people,
Right.
I don't tend to EMDR because it can be re-traumatizing, and I don't think we have to go back in, but it is effective for some people.
Right.
There's a lot of things that help to take that event and move it, a lot of medicine work, psychedelic work. We can move that to another part of the brain where it says that's in the past. We can't take away what's
Right.
happened to us, but we
No.
can file it into a place where it's no longer in the thing,
No longer affecting it the way that it was.
as if it's happening now.
Right.
It's like a data misread that the hand is still there.
Yeah.
The hand's no longer in the sand.
So let's scuff up the sand a little
That's
bit
right.
and smooth it back out.
That's right.
I heard two kind of things, and I'm just going to be real open about like kind of where my brain went, because handing your computer to your son and then just deleting the programs, it's not that quick and easy. I mean, because the things that you then talked about, what does that look like? Whether it's therapy, whether it's rapid resolution therapy, whether it's CBT.
Nope, that wouldn't be one.
No.
Cognitive behavior
Right.
therapy wouldn't be that.
The ones that you just
all the bottom
yeah.
up. We'll just call it
Yeah.
bottom.
I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but that's can be a pretty lengthy process. That can be a lot of deprogramming or reprogramming, or
I don't.
maybe not some of the medicinal ones that can
No,
maybe
I
go a
mean,
little quicker.
they can, or or not.
Okay.
Like um, I wouldn't say that for what, so again, like I went seeking out these things that weren't going to take a long time,
Hmm.
that where we were spending years in therapy talking about it.
Mm-hmm.
I went looking for something that could get it done. I needed to move. Right. So
Sure.
my like business model is not a repeat clientele business model.
Right.
And I think there's a lot of, now I'm just gonna get on my soapbox about this, but
Sure.
if we just even look at rehab and
Mm-hmm.
rehab centers,
Yeah.
they're dependent on repeat
Yeah.
clientele. So we look at the therapeutic model. Now, I'm down for like meeting with someone every week and
Mm-hmm.
talking to them. I think a lot of people think they have to be in crisis to do that. You actually don't
No,
have to be in crisis to
I'm a
meet
I'm
with someone.
a pretty firm believer in that.
Right.
Yeah, myself.
When the mind, when we're misreading the data, when there's a data misread, if you just think like this for a little bit and that we're seeing it as if it's still happening, there are things we can do that we've learned about that isn't, that's a different way. And it does move a little bit quicker.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not, because that is scary. If someone thinks like, oh shit, I just found this stuff up about, now I got to go through all this
Right.
therapy
Yeah.
and I got to go back and relive it. And I
Sure.
got, no, not
But
necessarily.
even that, and I'm not disagreeing with you
Mhm.
at all. I'm agreeing with you. And even that, it's going to continue to be going to the gym to lose weight as opposed to taking the shot that magically makes my weight go away, right? I mean,
I
it's
don't like that analysis because I'm a super fan of the GLP ones.
oh, I
But
don't have any
I know you don't, but
I
it's not,
quick versus
it's like, I guess what you're saying is some things are going to be effort and some things are going to go a little quicker.
yeah,
Yes. The answer is yes.
because
Some things are going to go,
yeah,
and I guess the buy-in comes when there's something in the unconscious
mm-hmm,
that's driving. Um we don't want to look at it. It's coming out regardless
right,
in the form of anxiety, depression, addiction.
okay,
It's still there. So you're still working your ass off.
mm-hmm,
Like we just are familiar with that sort of work.
okay,
And
yeah,
so the ego has a real attachment to like, I know how to do this depression.
the devil kind of thing,
Yes,
right,
right. So you're still working really hard.
and not getting as much of a fulfilled and meaningful life that you could be having if you, like you said, had some curiosity about it, did the not to say
Hmm.
did the work, but did a certain type of work, right? That's what we're talking about, doing it in a way that is going to benefit your overall well-being
Well, and to
and
know there's no end. Like
yeah,
we'll never get to all the unconscious material.
right.
Young would, I mean, in analysis, you're in analysis for the
You're never
rest of
done
your
with it.
life.
Yeah.
And because of that thing of once you know the system has changed. So you can never truly know the system,
Right.
right? So and it's again, it's beautiful. This is part of the experience of
Right.
being human.
Right.
So that's that thing of like making meaning of your life.
Right.
And it's so then when you do die, and we all will, at the end of it, you've said, okay, like I'm here, not just
This is
the fear that
where
I
I
was raised in or the story of my, even our culture, as a country, every
mhm,
country has its own unconscious material.
collectively.
Yes,
Yeah.
yeah, the collective unconscious of a
Mhm.
country, and we're seeing that collective unconscious right
Big time.
now.
Yeah.
Yeah, in
Mhm.
a really gross way because we keep
Yeah.
pretending like what's the story been? America the Great's been the story, and the history is atrocious, and we haven't spent any time looking at the unconscious and
What's
how
great.
that
Yeah.
has driven where we are today.
Right.
So we have the collective unconscious,
Mhm.
our familial unconscious, the
Mhm.
or generational. We have and just how we were raised, we're going to have material to work with. Like there's nothing,
Yeah.
as when when we're new parents, there's kind of this sense of like, I'm going to do everything so that they don't have any suffering and they're not
Right.
going to grow up. No, it's just not possible. They're going to
Right.
grow up and have to look at their deep waters
Right.
too.
A lot of it probably coming from you and what you worked so hard to try to, shield them from.
Oh gosh.
Yeah.
I mean, that is a whole
Yeah.
another episode.
Yeah.
Again,
Yeah.
all that unconscious material. If I had said, let's say that I'm going to raise my children in direct opposition to how I was raised, it's
Mhm.
still not Laura raising her children.
Right.
It's the direct opposition to how I was raised. That's
Right.
not what I was thinking. But
You
right,
shy
it's like,
away from.
right. So how do then what's Laura?
Right.
What's Laura as mom? Not what's Laura as mom going to be just like my mom or just the opposite?
Yeah.
Like that is a question to be asked. And
Yeah.
we see that we're seeing that in big time
Oh,
with
yeah.
gentle parenting right now. It's like this huge swing,
Right.
um, like overcorrecting around.
Yeah. Can I go back for just a
Yeah.
little bit to the like collective unconscious thing
Mm.
and both familial? Is it all just personal work? Is there work? Because we're talking about systematic or systemic um, unconsciousness. And, you talked about the country and what we're going through and
Hmm.
all that. Is the work, does it have to all just be done at the personal level in hopes that, how do we work on, maybe that's a big
Yeah.
question, but
No,
how do we
it
work on that as a community, interpersonally between two people or a group of people, and then all the way out to potentially globally? Like, how is that something that we even work on? Does it all have to start?
I mean, the micro is the macro. So,
Yeah.
in that way, there's that reflection. So, as we tend to the unconscious stories, beliefs that we hold, then it does that internal system, who we are, starts to transform. And then how we connect with our neighbors, how we connect with the community, both local and global,
Mhm.
we start to see, right? Like, oh, here yeah, that is how we shift systems,
Mhm.
right? So
Right.
that that trauma isn't being voted in
Right.
to office, right?
Yeah.
um
But how do I force people that don't want to take a look into their own subconscious or unconscious to do it? Laura, how do
I
I
know.
force someone to do something?
I
Because
know.
I feel like they're being horrible.
Yeah, they're being exploited
Mhm.
too, right?
Yeah.
For power. So um yeah, that's interesting, because that is the work that we then have to work with. Of That's the stuff we're working with of,
Yeah.
and so, like, personally for me, um in that first election in 2016 of the now president, I took the approach of like, well, I'm cutting off. I cut off my conversations with my dad. Like, I'm not even,
Mhm.
and he was vague in what he did, if he did or didn't vote, but I knew well enough to know that I can't even, my anger was so big, I couldn't even engage.
Right.
And then, as I was unpacking my own,
Mhm.
at the same time you unpack your own stuff, you're actively unpacking the systems in which we're participating in.
Mhm.
I had to really learn how to have deeper, harder conversation. And so for me, I was more active outside in community and protesting. And then I had to come back into my inner circle with the people that pissed me off the most, that angered me the most, and be like, okay, how do I sit with the direct
Right. With you.
impact of
Yeah.
you, and what your work and your trauma leading you to this story of truth, right? And what you're unwilling to unpack. And so, that's my journey. That's not everyone's
Yeah.
journey.
We've
Sometimes
we've really just kind of scratched the surface of a topic that would be, I think, really difficult, but also meaningful to have maybe at some point, about what that looks like,
well, a lot of fucking training, I'll tell you, is
Yeah.
what it looked like for me,
Yeah.
because I could. be where your feet are. I mean,
Yeah.
it was easier for me to express my anger um, at a politician's door protesting
Well, then
than
to
to
bring
sit
it in close, of
across
course.
the table from my dad and being like, "Are
Yeah.
you kidding me right now?" I had like
It's the most
talk about,
yeah, I'm sorry.
yeah, right. You
The
go
most
ahead.
meaningful relationships are in jeopardy
Mm-hmm.
then. And how far am I willing to take this, and how much am I willing to, you know,
Mm-hmm.
to sacrifice for my values and things like that.
Mm-hmm. And
But
we have
we
to know there
yeah,
has to be hard lines for me.
yeah,
There are certain things that
are not okay
mhm.
in my opinion, yeah, or in
Yeah.
my viewpoint, yeah.
Hmm. But the reality too is there are certain things that my dad doesn't know about me
Mhm,
that have in the unpacking, and he's all about unpacking the unconscious, and he was in therapy in the 90s,
mhm,
but like that's a that's about him. But about my unpacking,
mhm.
I think, well, he doesn't have the experiences that I have.
Right.
And that's the big piece of having that conversation. And I think we
Yeah,
should. I think this is so important to
right.
sit down and have a separate podcast that isn't about
Agreed.
the unconscious.
Yeah. But it's a good kind of glimpse into that. So thanks for being a little vulnerable there
Yeah.
with that. Okay,
Can I share
so
a story? It's coming to
please.
mind.
Yeah.
When I was growing up, there was a man on death row and he was set to be executed, and my dad and I followed this, and I was
Hmm.
raised in an environment of pro death penalty.
Mhm.
So he and I would even cut out like articles about this man, and then I went to college my freshman year, and his name was Willie Ote. He was being executed, and I went down to the protest slash rally, and I was raised to believe in the death penalty.
Mhm.
That wasn't even right. So I went, and the pro death penalty side was chanting "Go Big Red," and they had pots and pans. And I remember
Go
being,
big red.
yeah, at the state penitentiary as a man's about to be executed. Just
Mm.
to give context,
Okay.
I looked over to my right, and my English professor was sitting with in candlelight vigil, sitting in meditation with tears running down her face. And I remember thinking, I'm on the wrong side.
Mm.
But not well enough. Like it was like really in those deep waters. Like
Yeah.
something's wrong here. Something doesn't align with mine. Now, the conscious mind, the ego would say, like, well, don't challenge this because your belonging and your connection to your
Look at
dad
these huskers behind you. Yeah.
is this shared value of death
Right.
penalty.
Right.
So when I went home, I ran into a woman, and this is an amazing woman who was the wife of a minister, probably long gray hair. You can
Hmm.
imagine
Oh
long
yeah.
gray hair.
I've got her.
Yeah.
She's up there. Yeah.
And I told her the story, and I had the voice of excited about going to the death penalty, and I mean,
The
the
execution of this man.
execution of
Yeah.
this man. And she looked at me in this way, and it only took a look that was like, what do you believe? Like, what feels right to you? But she just gave me this look.
Mm.
Her name is Sam. And I remember thinking, oh, I don't align with this with my family, with my dad. And I had to run the risk of losing that relationship with my dad when I said to him, I actually don't believe in the death penalty.
Yeah.
It was heartbreaking. And I don't want to sit on the pots and pans side of life.
No.
And that is the unconscious becoming conscious
Right.
and saying, oh, I'm going to run the risk of belonging because that's part of coming of age. Like, is this mine?
Mm.
Do I, right?
Right.
And so how do I feel about that? That was hard in the moment to say I don't align with you, but oh, I wouldn't change it,
No.
especially now that I know even deeper. Um,
Mm.
No, but like yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. We can cut this part out, but
Mm.
what did that do to your relationship with your dad?
He was fine with it.
He didn't care.
Yeah. Weirdly. He was like, okay. You got to decide for yourself.
Yeah.
I don't even know if he was into it.
Right.
Because if I look at him, he
What
cries
did his iceberg look like?
that was his inherited belief too. Because if I look at him, he loses a mama cow, he cries. Like he's a
Yeah.
highly sensitive person,
Sure.
and he would
Yeah.
be. So I don't think he wanted to even connect with me on that. We just didn't. He didn't have another way to connect, and
Right.
that was his inherited,
Right.
family of origin stuff.
Yeah.
So
His
he was.
generational
Yeah,
stuff.
the fear I had wasn't even something to fear because he still loved me. He still was fine. He actually probably sits more with that being okay, of
Right.
course. I
Whether or
don't
not he's willing to admit it or not is
Right, he's not for prisons.
right. Yeah.
So ends up
Yeah.
that when I faced that, it only gave me more clarity as to what else is here.
Yeah.
Yeah. And there's something there too, in the way of like when we look at greater systems changing, and the collective unconscious,
Mhm.
it really is in the juice of personal relationships. In interpersonal, the one we have with ourselves, but also in the ones that challenge us in our family of origin of, or it's
Yeah. How much of the things do we cling to simply for the sake of maintaining this relationship? Because
and
we're afraid to even bridge the topic of maybe dad doesn't even align with death penalty.
mhm.
Maybe or even if he does, maybe he doesn't, maybe he values me more than my belief on this one social political standing.
Well, and it makes sense from an animal perspective
Oh
because
yes.
when we're younger, we have to stay attached to the
Mm-hmm.
food giver. But at some point, we do have to, cut the apron string
Mm-hmm.
or untie the apron strings, however that saying goes, and go figure it out for ourselves. Is this mine? Is this how I'm going to navigate?
Yeah.
And is this even what wants to come through me?
Right.
I mean, I'm a pacifist
Mm-hmm.
through and through.
Right.
And I always have been.
Mm-hmm.
When I wasn't raised in that environment where I was raised in the community I was raised in, but
But
when I
that's
look
always been what's felt.
yeah, like
Yeah.
when I look back, and I remember thinking I must be adopted. And there's like pictures of me coming out of my mother's womb,
Yeah.
like covered in the white wax. Like
Yeah.
but I was like, I just don't fit
Yeah.
in this.
That's so
This isn't me.
there's so many things that can be said, or so many, probably, I imagine sitting in a basement full of green smoke talking about why, like, how wild it is that such a different set of synapses in the brain to create who Laura is or who Jeff is or who Sammy is or whoever
Mm-hmm.
is can be so different from what we were born into and who we were born from. And then it gets you into thinking like, well, is the person I know as my mother or my father, are they being true to themselves? Do I even know who the real
Unlikely.
mom is or the real dad is? Because have they let their true self come out? And did their parents and did their blah, you go back and through, and like you said, unlikely,
Yeah,
you know.
because I mean, it's a privilege for me to be sitting here,
Yes.
as if I don't think when my mom got a divorce, she could even get a credit card.
Right.
Like as if here I am wanting an anthropology butter dish, she was
Yeah.
like, I don't think there was access to now young predates my mom's divorce, of
Sure.
course, but like analysis has been going on forever, and curiosity of the unconscious has been
Right.
going on forever.
Yeah.
And has the individual done the thing,
But in the not too distant past, you and I would have been burned for having this conversation.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So understandably, the society, as you would say, the water we swim in does have an effect on what we can and be privileged to talk about and to even
Mm-hmm.
explore for our own
Mm-hmm.
well-being, which is a shame, but it's the truth.
Mm-hmm.
So as we get ready to go.
Mm-hmm.
We like to let our listeners go with something tangible, something accessible, something, even if they're just in their car and they're trying to, digest what it is that we've talked about.
Mm-hmm.
What would be your recommendation for what should people be or what could people be working on right now? What's something you can do to sort of tap into that unconscious and then apply that to your own curiosity?
And I think that's right. I think what you just said is, can you stay curious?
Mm.
Can you stay curious? And you might even, like, if you were to do a journal prompt, obviously not while driving, but if you were to do a journal prompt, it would be like, what wants to come through? And my beginning and journey on this, years ago, we always felt into the body. So it would be looking more like a doorway or a trailhead as to like what's here, sensing it. So if you were not driving, if you closed your eyes and sort of sensed into yourself, and it might be like, okay, I'm feeling something right here. And then ask, like, what wants to come through? Or, is there a symbol that could come through? Because the unconscious mind works well with symbols or color. Is there an image or a story? And you may or may not hear anything, and that's okay. The curiosity and the question asking is where we start.
Mm.
And then we just, is this mine? Is this? And then we listen again.
Mm.
Journaling, what wants to come through. Let it journal. Active imagination is the Jungian lens, and I work with people one-on-one in active imagination and hypnotherapy and rapid resolution. So we get to go to those liminal spaces without medicine or without psychedelics. But, we can sort of tease that process out in our everyday. And it's not that difficult. It's actually kind of exciting because you go, oh, whoa, here's that pattern. Or you could ask, what's a pattern? What's a pattern here that keeps repeating that I'm finding myself stuck in?
Mm-hmm.
And if we can stay curious and just sit with it a little bit, and probably a little bit longer than we're like, oh, because remember, the ego is really attached to you.
Once you hear,
wants to keep the shape we got.
Yeah.
We want to keep this shape, and that's what it's, or form, or this story.
Yeah.
And so
don't challenge it.
That's right. And so if we just kind of sit a little longer, we might get some juice out of that. Yeah.
Squeeze the juice. I did juice yesterday.
You did?
Yeah.
Okay, nice. Yeah. Good. I love juicing.
I know.
The whole thing is fun.
It's kind of the what's the word? Cathartic?
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
Cathartic's a great word for it.
As the sun dipped low, the iceberg faded behind him. But the question stayed close. What lies beneath? The traveler didn't need to name it all, just to notice, just to stay curious. Because even what we can't see plays a part in explaining how we ended up here.